Hi, everybody. My name is Mark with Quigley Transportation. I head up the sales efforts at the organization. A couple housekeeping notes to begin with. First of all, there's no hard selling today. This is educational and hopefully informative to help you and your company. We started last year with a commitment that beginning this year in January, we would offer a complimentary webinar each and every month as a way of giving back for all that you did during, which hopefully we're going to get behind us sooner than later, all the COVID experiences and everything else. So for those of you that have joined us before, welcome back. For those of you first timers, welcome. We're glad you're here. This slide deck that we're going to go through today is yours. If you'd like, just email Brett or myself. You'll see the contact information for us. We'll shoot that out to you. Again, complimentary, no charge. And then we did do the other webinars. So if you're a first timer and you need any assistance with hours of service or DQ files, drug and alcohol clearinghouse, managing your CSA portal, and we've done a host of other webinars so far this year. Feel free to also ask us in a response back, and we'll send you those slide decks also. And then, of course, if you have any questions, comments, if there's anything we can do to help, just reach out at your convenience. So that's from a housekeeping standpoint. I'd like to just jump right into our webinar today. I can tell you it's the most number of registrations we've had this year. I think we hit a nerve with DOT audits. So you've joined us today. Perhaps you're worried about an audit. You've been through an audit. You're wondering what's going to happen if you are ever audited. And so we hope to give you a nice broad brush overview that no matter where you're at today from a DOT audit standpoint, either a long ways away and you're not in harm's way of that, or you're in the throes of it, hopefully we're adding some value to you today that's going to help you and your company go through whatever process you're going through right now. One of the main reasons we picked this topic, there's a quote years ago from President Kennedy. So you go way back to the 60s, and he said, the time to fix your roof is when the sun is shining. So hopefully the sun is still shining on you and you're not in the throes of a DOT audit, and this helps you before you ever get to that space. But even if the rain is beating down on your roof right now, I think you're going to have some takeaways that are going to help you from there. As we go through, any questions you've got, you can put them in the chat box. They're visible. You can click just to Brett and myself. So if you're worried about confidentiality, not letting anybody else know what concerns you've got that space of privacy. And we also did get some questions in advance that some of them we're actually going to cover, but we'll read the question at the tail end of our time together just to make sure there's no other follow-up questions in that each of you had that provided the question in advance. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Brett, our president and founder of Quigley Transportation. And again, thank you very much for joining. Sit back, and hopefully this next 45 minutes or so together is going to be really beneficial to you.
All right. Well, thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Mark said, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in what is now our 7th monthly webinar, which this month we'll be presenting on understanding a DOT compliance review or audit. And when I say compliance review or audit, I interchange those definitions. So obviously it's a new entrant audit or a DOT compliance review. So don't get hung up on either or. I would have never guessed that we would have had the number of registrants that we have for this webinar. And when I started putting it together, though, I started looking at the number of audits that the FMCSA has done this year, or what they're on track to do this year as compared to previous years. It was pretty staggering, which I'm going to share those numbers with you later on in the presentations, along with the number of penalties, fines that they've issued to motor carriers. And I think that'll be an eye-opening number for you. I know it was for myself, and I'll share where you can obtain that information on your own. But first, a little bit of background on myself and Quigley Transportation Management Solutions. So, having over 40 years of experience managing 3 of the nation's 100 largest private fleets, I handpicked a team of consultants that I've worked with for years that demonstrated an excellent base of knowledge, work ethic, and a commitment to success. Together, we're leveraging our decades of experience to assist typically smaller companies reduce their transportation costs and improve their compliance. Oops, I'm sorry. Reduce their transportation costs while improving their compliance and reducing their risks. So you'll notice that the slide says here, we're in the pain relief business. And by this, I mean that we help our clients relieve pain that they have relative to DOT compliance and fleet management. Certainly, a DOT audit causes some pain, even if you pass it. There's pain involved with the process. But whether it be administration of the various programs, could be financial pain as it relates to having to employ additional people to manage your program. Could be paying fines, or as we're seeing with a lot of our clients today, experiencing a significant loss of revenue as a result of a compromised safety rating. A lot of our clients are seeing upwards, if not more than 40% loss in revenue once they receive a conditional rating. So we not only offer consulting services, but also a wide range of other fleet and DOT compliance related services that we can tailor to a carrier's specific needs. So with that, I am going to stop my video so you don't have to look at my mug throughout the rest of this. And we will proceed ahead here. So this material will be available to you after the webinar, as Mark mentioned. So I'm not going to cover each slide in finite detail. However, if you have questions, as Mark mentioned, on any of the material, you can submit your questions through the chat or Q&A. We'll address those at the end of the session, in our Q&A session. And if you think of something after the webinar, feel free to reach out to Mark or I, either via phone or email, and we will respond back to you as quickly as we can. So with that, on today's agenda, we're going to talk about the types of compliance reviews, what prompts a compliance review, the review process, the possible results once you go through a compliance review, the risk of non-compliance, how to correct a compromised safety rating, and then finally the Q&A session. Okay, there are 3 main types of DOT audits. You've got the new entrant audit, which is conducted on newly formed carriers within 12 months of obtaining their DOT number. So there's a lot of new carriers out there that are going to be subject to this audit within the next 12 months. You also have focus compliance reviews, and these are conducted when a carrier has at least one alert in the SMS CSA basics. Now, if you're not familiar with what those basics are, excuse me, what those basics are, that we had a previous webinar on that, which you can obtain that information from Mark, like he said, or it's available on YouTube, or you can simply reach out to us and we'll be glad to assist you in that as well. We also have full or comprehensive compliance reviews, which are conducted when a carrier has multiple alerts in their SMS or CSA basics, or as a result of a serious accident or a complaint. So there are two other types of reviews, which are security and hazardous materials. So typically, these are performed at the same time if a carrier is subject to the hazardous materials regulations. But for today's presentation, I'll be focusing on the first three, which are the most common. Okay, when a motor carrier obtains their USDOT number, they are considered a new entrant for at least the first 18 months of operation, during which time they will operate under provisional operating authority. So during this time, they are placed under an enhanced monitoring program by the FMCSA to ensure that they demonstrate that they understand and are operating in compliance with the federal motor carrier safety regulations. So within that first 12 months, the FMCSA will conduct a new entrant audit on these carriers, verifying their knowledge and compliance. So upon receiving notice of the audit from the FMCSA, a carrier will be required to submit the information listed on the right side of the slide here, typically within 20 days of when the notice was issued. This information will have to be submitted via upload through your SMS portal account. So again, if you're not familiar with that, that's something that you need to be aware of. We can certainly help you with that if you need that. Okay, if the auditor identifies violations on a new entrant in any of these 16 areas of compliance, a new entrant will automatically fail their new entrant audit and either receive a conditional or unsatisfactory safety rating. So while some of these are based on a failure rate of 51% of the examined records, the majority, as you can see, only require a single occurrence to result in a failure of the audit. So these areas of compliance include drug and alcohol testing, driver qualification, insurance, hours of service, as well as vehicle maintenance. So these specific areas, if you're a new entrant, you want to make sure you're buttoned up and operating under all the areas of compliance relative to these areas, because if you fail in any of these, you'll automatically fail your audit.
And again, Brett, there's a lot of information here. Again, we're not going to go through each line, but you can have the slide so you know exactly where you need to be focused in on, especially as a new entrant audit.
Correct. Thanks, Mark. So this slide is an example of a completed new entrant audit for one of our clients. So prior to partnering with us, this carrier was deficient in almost nearly every area that is checked during a new entrant audit. So they had contacted us. Fortunately, they contacted us before receiving notice of the audit. They wanted our help in helping them become compliant, which I applaud them, as opposed to they being proactive as opposed to reactive. So we were able to bring them into compliance and also represent them in the audit, which resulted in them successfully passing the audit. Had they not reached out to us, they would have likely received an unsatisfactory safety rating as well as an out of service order. So during a focus compliance review, an auditor will review specific areas of compliance. So these areas are determined by those SMS CSA basics that a carrier has an alert in. So a focus review is usually listed as a non-rateable review if the carrier passes the review. However, if they fail the review, they will receive either a conditional or unsatisfactory rating. If an auditor discovers serious violations during a focus review, they can change it from a focus review to a full compliance review. So similar to the new entrant audit, the carrier is required to initially upload specific information. However, it's typically required within 5 days rather than 20 days of when the notice was issued. Once the audit begins, the auditor will likely request additional documentation, which you have 48 hours to respond to that request. Failure to respond within 48 hours, you'll be deficient in that area. So I've listed some common examples of these types of additional documents. This is by no means all of the documents that they can recommend or request, but these are some of the main ones. So like ELD records and supporting documents for hours of service, driver qualification files to support driver fitness, maintenance files and DVIRs to support vehicle maintenance, and then your testing records to support the drug and alcohol. Full or comprehensive compliance reviews are generally handled in the same manner as a focus review, except the auditor will review all areas of compliance pertaining to the motor carrier, the drivers, as well as the vehicles. So this type of review will result in one of three safety ratings, either satisfactory, conditional, or unsatisfactory, which I will speak more about later. So there are many reasons that a carrier can be selected for an audit or review. So as if a fatality or serious accident involving one of your vehicles doesn't cause enough problems for you and your company, it will also likely prompt a compliance review of your operation. So you've got that to look forward to in addition to dealing with all the aftermath of an accident. So other reasons can include high out of service rates in your driver category, your vehicle category, or hazmat as compared to the national averages. So this is something that's posted monthly on your SMS scores. So that's something that if you're not monitoring, you definitely should. Alerts in your SMS and CSA basics. Again, something you should be closely monitoring on a monthly basis. And then finally, driver complaints to DOT by either current or former drivers. And of course, there's the required new entrant audit that I've already discussed. Okay, the review process for each of the different types of reviews pretty much follows the same basic agenda. So first, you will receive a notice of the review and a request for information from the FMCSA. Then you are required to log into your SMS account using your US DOT number and your US DOT PIN number to upload all information that has been requested. Third step is the auditor will schedule an audit meeting when conducting an on-site review. Fourth step is during this meeting, the auditor will interview the company official and discuss the scope of the review. During the review itself, the auditor may request additional documentation, which you must provide again within 48 hours of the request. So depending on the scope and type of the review, it can last from 1 day to several weeks. I've had audits last up to 2 weeks in length. Again, the auditor can be there every day. They can come and go. It's all at their prerogative. So once the auditor is finished with the review, they will schedule a meeting or phone conversation to review the results. And then the last step is a comprehensive report with the safety rating result will be emailed to the carrier. Okay, you survived the audit itself, and now for the results. So as I mentioned earlier, a new entrant or focus review can result in either conditional, unsatisfactory, or a not rated safety rating, while a full or comprehensive review can result in either a satisfactory, conditional, or unsatisfactory safety rating. So you have to go through a full review to get a satisfactory rating. Any of them can produce a conditional or unsat rating. So here's a description of each of these ratings. And if you receive an unsat rating, You must submit a request for upgrade with proof of compliance within 60 days or 45 days for hazmat carriers. Otherwise, your operation will be placed out of service at the end of that 45 or 60 days. So in addition to possibly becoming a safety hazard for your drivers and other motorists, not operating in compliance with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations places your company at risk of fines, increased insurance costs, significant loss of revenue due to loss of business, litigation, and worst of all, potential criminal penalties. So here's some information showing the number of safety audits performed over the last 2.5 years and the number of each type of rating that was issued. You'll note for 2021 that it is on track to exceed the numbers for the previous 2 years. In speaking with an auditor from the state of Georgia recently, he told me that during the pandemic, there were approximately 6,000 newly created carriers just in Georgia, all of which they are required to perform new entrant audits on within the first 12 months. So if that happened in Georgia, you can imagine it's pretty much nationwide that they had this huge influx of new carriers during the pandemic. So as I mentioned, the risk of incurring fines as a result of an audit or compliance review can be significant, especially for smaller carriers. So here are the numbers for the same time period. The dollar amounts represent the total number of fines issued, the highest fine issued to any one carrier during that period of time, the lowest issued, and then the average of the fines issued for that year. So you may be wondering, if I transpose the highest fine for 2021, the one showing $12,173,000. So I can assure you that I didn't. This was issued to a Texas-based company for a tank facility violation. So that makes up nearly half of 2021's total amount of fines collected by DOT. So as I mentioned, here's the web address for the source of this information. I found it very interesting. I think you may as well. I encourage you to go out and look at it. There's a lot of data out there. You can look at different types of carriers. You can drill it down by state. A lot of ways to slice and dice the information. So if you find yourself in a situation with a compromised safety rating as a result of a compliance review, so I'm going to provide you some guidance on how to best address that. So if you received a conditional or unsatisfactory safety rating, requesting an upgrade is a wise thing to do. Certainly because of nothing else, it'll affect your insurance costs, not to mention if you're a for-hire carrier, a significant impact on your ability to secure loads. However, one thing to keep in mind, this can be a lengthy and tedious process that's best left to professionals who have done it many times before. It's not to say you can't do it yourself, but keep in mind that FMCSA is very specific in what they require and how they want it presented. So before you or a professional can start the upgrade request process, you must ensure that all deficiencies have been corrected. This is one thing that when we partner with our clients that to help them with their upgrade, typically the first thing we do is partner with them on some of the programs to bring them to correct their deficiencies and bring them into compliance, because a lot of times we have to provide proof that in fact that they are operating compliant. The other thing is a safety management plan, or SMP, is required for an upgrade request, and these must include: identify each violation noted on the audit report, identify why each violation was allowed to occur, identify what specific actions you've taken to ensure that the violations will not reoccur, and And then for any acute or critical violations, you must provide proof that the actions have been implemented. So examples of this would include like 30 days worth of ELD records for 3 drivers, DVIRs for 3 vehicles for 30 days, copies of random drug test results, and things of that nature. So an upgrade can take months to accomplish depending on the amount and type of violations and the workload of your designated FMCSA service center. One thing that they do is any carrier with an unsat rating, they take priority over any carriers with conditional ratings. So bottom line, ensuring that what you submit in as far as the information, make sure it's correct the first time you submit it is critical, because if you don't and it gets denied, it's only going to further delay that process, and you got to go back and resubmit it again. Finally, in this area, I recommend that you partner with a company that guarantees that you will receive an upgrade. This is one of the main reasons that our clients have partnered with us, as we guarantee results, and we will not charge additional fees in the unlikely event that our first upgrade request is denied. In nearly every case, because we pay attention to detail, and in almost every case, when we submit a request for upgrade, it is granted the first attempt. Now, there's been some instances where that's not the case, but it's the exception rather than the rule. All right, and with that, we will open it up for questions.
So Brett, I shared at the beginning, we had a number of questions come in advance of the webinar. If any other questions, things we didn't cover today that are top of mind to you that joined us, feel free to put in the chat. Any questions, just Brett and I will see those, and we'll cover those in the time we still have available. If there's any takeaways, if there's something that we're not familiar with, we'll commit to get back to you directly, but let's just begin. Some of these I believe you've covered, but I, again, just want to make sure. First question we got, I've got these all in chronological order of what would happen from audit all the way through. So what triggers a DOT audit?
Yeah, so that was, I think I addressed that earlier on, but to reiterate, so that can be your high out of service rates. It can be alerts in your SMS CSA basics. It can be an accident. It can be a driver complaint.
Okay. The second question we got, so I've been notified that I'm going to be audited. How much time do I have to prepare for that audit, from notice to actual auditor in my office?
So for a new entrant audit, you have 20 days to respond typically. For a focused or full audit, you'll have typically 5 days to respond. So it's not a case of where if you're operating non-compliant in a specific area or multiple areas and you receive a notice of audit, you're not going to have time to bring it into compliance by the time the audit takes place. So that's why it's critical that you address these issues proactively and ensure that you're operating within compliance prior to receiving an audit.
Okay. Thank you. Next one was, what do they look for specifically in an audit? And again, I think we covered this, but anything you want to add?
So again, depending on the type of audit, they will, I can't recite it off the top of my head, but I listed those off on the right side of those slides. But typically you're going to have to complete a a carrier questionnaire, and they're going to ask for general information on the carrier itself, as well as your annual revenue, because they want to see what your ability to pay is when it comes to the fines. And from there, then you got to supply a driver's list. You have to supply an equipment list of commercial motor vehicles. You would, again, on a new entrant audit, you would supply a copy of essentially some documents out of one driver qualification file. You would have to supply hours of service records for one driver. You may have to supply maintenance records for one vehicle. On a focused audit, it's going to be specific to the areas that they're auditing. So if it's hours of service record, if it's out of hours of service, you're going to have to provide ELD records and supporting documents to the auditor for typically drivers that they select, because what they're going to do is go through roadside inspection data, crash data, and they're typically going to select the drivers that they know where they were at a given time to ensure that their logs, that they audit those logs. So that, and then, whether it be like drug and alcohol violations, they're going to make sure that you've got a random drug testing program in place. They're going to, if you have DOT recordable crashes that required a post-accident test, they're going to request those post-accident tests. So it all depends on the type of audit, but that kind of gives you a general idea of what kind of documents they're looking for.
Gotcha. We got two more questions that came in advance, and then we have a lot of questions that are coming in via chat in the Q&A section. So bear with us, just going through the order they received. Next question in advance was, what if I fail my audit?
So when you fail your audit, I'm assuming you got a conditional or unsat rating. So that's where you would embark on the process of requesting an upgrade once you bring those deficiencies into compliance. So again, that's where I recommend, it's not required, but I recommend that you partner with a professional service like ourselves, consulting companies that do this on a regular basis, because they typically have a format already established that has passed the test of DOT, and they will more than likely be able to, now maybe a painful process for you to provide all the data that they're requiring, but they're doing it, all those requests are for a reason. They're doing it so that they get you the upgrade. So just submitting a request in, and I'm sure some companies do this, we don't. I refuse to submit a request in that's not typically going to pass. But some companies may do that just due to lack of knowledge or simply to get it off their desk. I won't do that.
Okay. And the last question, and I believe you touched on this too, but this one we actually got from two people. What is the procedure to request a change in the safety rating?
So that was so that's where you submit in your, so you can do one of two things. You can do a request, an upgrade request, or you can request a full safety audit, full safety compliance review. Now, as you can imagine, DOT only has so many resources that they're working with. So they're trying to address carriers that have poor safety scores, that appear to be a safety risk to the motoring public. And that's where they're devoting their resources to identify what the issues are with those carriers, get the unsafe carriers off the road. So while you can submit a request for a compliance review, it's going to fall to the bottom of the priority list. You're better off, in my opinion, requesting an upgrade and make sure it's thorough enough to support an upgrade to either. So if you were a non-rated company before being conditional or unsat, the best you can hope for in a upgrade is a non-rated review again, or safety rating again. If you had a satisfactory rating before a conditional or unsat, then your goal is to get that back up to a satisfactory rating.
Gotcha. So those were all the questions, Brett, we got in advance. Those of you that submitted those, if there are any follow-up questions, if we didn't cover as much detail as you would like in the responses, feel free to submit a follow-up question in chat or the Q&A. I'm going to jump right in, Brett, and just go down in order and keep firing them in if there's anything else you guys need out there on the line with us. First one, I'll answer, Brett. Will we send out the recording? Wasn't able to join for the first couple of minutes. Yes, with the slide deck that will go to all of you, I'll make the offer to send you the video link. This will be presented out on YouTube, and just respond back to that. We have a process here at Quigley Transportation. It's not a joke. We don't ram anything down anybody's throat. So if you're interested, ask. We'll give you that video recording, and it's a YouTube link that you can watch at your leisure. Next question we got, Brett. If a company has one alert on SMS, is it for sure that an audit would show up?
No. No, especially given how busy DOT is and the, with all the new entrants, as well as, with carriers with multiple alerts, I would say the likelihood that you'll receive an audit with one alert is not real high. Now, however, if you're involved in a serious accident along with that alert, then your chances will increase significantly. The other thing that the FMCSA has done in the past, that in talking with that auditor out of Georgia that I mentioned, that they're also looking at doing again, is contracting with private companies such as like Quigley Transportation Management Solutions to perform audits on their behalf. So that is a possibility that if they return to that could, increase the opportunities for additional audits for even carriers with one alert.
Okay. Where should the driver's information be on the folder?
Where should the driver's information be on the folder? I'm not sure I understand. So I'm assuming they're talking about the driver qualification folder. So you have to provide a driver list in an Excel document with specific information, and the driver qualification file will have specific documents that's required in that. So that's one of the again, a previous webinar that we did identified all the required components in a driver qualification file. As far as having information on the file folder itself, there really is no requirement there. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay. And if not, feel free to email Brett or myself. Again, our contact information is going to be in the slide deck. Next question, Brett, and I'm going to go a little fast here. We've got a lot of questions popping in. Hi, we are an Illinois-based carrier. We have 3 alerts in basics for hours of service, unsafe driving, and driver fitness. Should we expect an audit or no?
Yes.
So yes, okay.
So
All right,
about as simple as I can make it. Yes, I would be prepared for an audit, because when you get 3 alerts, the likelihood you're going to have an audit is pretty high.
gotcha. Okay. Next one, again, first part of the webinar, wasn't able to join. Recording will be available. Just ask. Next question, can the company keep files in electronic form, or does it have to be printed as well in Illinois?
No, it can be I don't know any specific requirements that are specific to Illinois that would require paper copies, but no, the FMC, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations allow electronic file formats. So, yeah, that is acceptable.
Okay. What is the IRP audit?
So IRP is totally unrelated to DOT. So that's the International Registration Plan. So similar to IFTA, the International Fuel Tax Administration or Agreement, I'm sorry. So the IRP is an apportion based license plate that carriers that operate over 26,000 vehicles over 26,000 pounds are required to obtain for those vehicles that operate in an interstate basis. So if they're crossing state lines, the vehicles are over 26,000 pounds, they are required to either get trip permits or have apportioned license plates. And what they come in and do, you have to maintain mileage records documenting the miles traveled by state, similar, essentially the same records as you would do for your IFTA reporting and for fuel taxes. And then what they do is apportion out the fees collected by the base state to those apportioned states based upon the percentage of miles that you run in each state. And if you're not keeping track of those records, then a state can come in, any state can come in and perform an audit and argue the fact that, well, you don't have records, you can't prove that you didn't operate in our state, so now we're going to charge you full base plate fees for the domicile state that you're in.
Okay. Thank you. The next question, how does a random drug test work if you're an owner operator and you just drive for yourself?
So you have to be part of a consortium that manages your random drug testing for you. And then you also have to designate a CTPA in the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse to manage the clearinghouse account for you.
Okay. That might be a little deep, so if there's a follow-up question about the process, the individual that submitted that question, feel free to reach out and we'll handle that one-on-one for you. Next one, real quick, send out the recording. Yes, again, we will do that if you ask for the link. Secondly, our safety rating percentage is pretty high compared to the national average, but we haven't had any violations in almost a year come November. What would you recommend for us to do to get our percentage lower? We have a smaller fleet.
So your safety rating percentage. So I'm assuming you're talking about your percentile for your basics. So it's a good thing you haven't had any violations for almost a year. So there's 2 ways to improve your CSA scores. Either, well, 3 ways actually. Either you don't get any violations, as is the case here. You get clean violations, that's the best way. Or you hope that your peer group gets more violations than you do and their scores get worse, which makes your scores better. Obviously, it comes down to training your drivers on what impact the CSA scores have on your company, also what they have on them as employees, but also the fact that CSA violations follow them for 3 years while it follows a carrier for 2 years. And those violations can be visible under the DOT's pre-employment screening program for any, if they're looking to change jobs, and any carrier is enrolled in the PSP program where they can pull that information on a prospective driver and see what their past pattern has been for roadside violations.
Okay. And I don't want to go on a tangent here, but I just want to real quickly say once more what Brett just said, because we're hearing from so many people like yourselves where the drivers are impacting you sadly in a negative way with your overall score and don't seem to care. At the end of the day, you can control what you can control, and you should. But the driver needs to understand, and you can plant that seed and help it grow in their mind, that regardless of a driver shortage and everything else out there, that if they hop from you to somebody else in a pre-employment screen, as Brett just shared, for 3 years, their bad behavior is going to be out there and could very well impact their employment opportunities. So hopefully you get somebody that's willing to come alongside you and support you and do the right thing from a safety standpoint. But again, it's imperative that the driver also understands they don't get off scot-free here. So just to throw that out.
Yeah, Mark, let me just expand on that, and I'm glad you added that. But so we're working with a couple clients right now that their drivers simply, as they put it, they don't give a damn about their inspections. And so one of the things that we're doing is working with their drivers, educating them on how safety scores are determined and how the SMS and CSA scores are determined, and what impact that has on the companies. And that's really where you have to start. Drivers don't know this, and they just assume that everything's going to be clicking along fine. The other thing is and DOT will look for this, is you have to have a progressive disciplinary policy in place that you follow, that if you have a driver with repetitive issues in a certain area, that you're doing more than just slapping them on the wrist time and time again, that you're doing something to ultimately get the driver's attention, and which ultimately may be termination. If they absolutely refuse to comply, then at the end of the day, you may be forced to terminate them. And I know that's difficult given the driver shortages today, but at the end of the day, that's what DOT is going to look for when they come in.
Okay, thank you. We got a few more here, so appreciate everybody's patience as we go through the questions. We're just trying to be as comprehensive but concise at the same time. Can I have all of their YouTube links? Yes. Since you asked specifically, I'll email the links once this webinar is available, which will be towards the end of the week, the links to each and every one of them. To the gentleman and the lady that asked for the YouTube link of the meeting, when it's available, yes, I'll send it to both of you. And lastly, thanks for the input. You're welcome. And then a couple more here. Does the auditor request driver files and log books from terminated drivers?
Yes, definitely. So you're required to keep a driver qualification file for 3 years after a driver leaves. So that's all subject to an auditor's request. Certainly the logbooks, they are or ELD records. You're required to maintain those for 6 months regardless if the driver is currently employed or not. So all that is fair game during a compliance review.
Okay. This one came in and already been answered about, this came in twice on the no violations since November, so good. Next one, we requested a safety upgrade in June. However, we were upgraded to conditional. My question is, moving forward, we want to request another safety upgrade. My question is, how far can they go back and request documents?
Yeah, I would want to take a look at, in that case, I would ask if you could email us your audit report and likely provide us with what you submitted to them the first time that you got it upgraded to conditional, because more than likely you were able to satisfy, so I'm assuming you had an unsat rating, they moved you up to conditional. So I'm assuming that you were able to satisfy some, but not all of what they had requested or they had identified for violations. So in that case, you would submit a revised SMP in that, and I would make it probably more comprehensive than less. I would go back and address everything that you previously did, plus address the ones that you didn't supply them enough information to satisfy a satisfactory or a not rated rating. But again, if you'd like to send us a copy of email us your audit report and what you submitted in, and then the response letter you got back, I can provide you some more guidance on that.
Okay. Next question, we already covered about IRP audit, and last one asking for all the links as well to YouTube. Yes, I will send those to you at the conclusion of getting this one put together. That, let me just double check, Brett, I believe are all the questions that we got.
Actually, I just saw another one, Mark, says, do you offer any safety trainings? So yes, we offer trainings, whether in a couple different ways. We can offer customized video trainings that you can host on your company's LMS system, which is learning management system, or if you want simply a customized training video that you can present just as like a PowerPoint presentation that's narrated, we can do that. Or we can have live trainers come out and do training. We can also do training via webinars that are recorded that then you can also present to other drivers that may not be able to be in attendance.
Fantastic. Okay. That, I believe, are all the questions we have. I want to leave it open-ended. If there's something you wanted to ask and for whatever reason didn't get around to it, feel free to reach out. There's Brett and my contact information. Help you out any way we can. We're very transparent. If we feel there's a course of action you can take, if you choose to take it. One thing we talk about is, if we're in your shoes, the biggest thing we want is certainty. Certainty that the issue or concern that I've got is resolved today, tomorrow, next week, and going forward. So I don't have to keep redoing the same thing over and over. So we're big on certainty here at Quigley Transportation. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. I'm going to hand it back to Brett, who'll do a very quick wrap up, and I wish you all a safe week going forward.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Again, thank you again for all your time and participation in today's webinar. Please join us next month when we present on another topic. We've not yet determined what that topic is going to be. With that said, if you have suggestions on a topic that you would like us to present on, let us know. I mean, we're always looking, we're here to help you. And if there's a topic that you would like us or like more information on, we'd gladly present on it. Until then, please be safe and let us know if we can be of any assistance with your transportation needs. And with that, we'll sign off. Again, thank you.